Am I the only one that's exhausted of characters like this? Women who are stoic or angry, narcissistic and entitled, vulgar and crass? Every time I turn on the television, I am confronted with these stoic, enraged women whose anger has no direct focus, but is instead aimed in a broad beam at everyone and everything around them, regardless of outside motives. Am I the only one that's tired of seeing women bulldoze the men in their lives for the sake of political or social cred? Calling themselves independent, modern women who don't need men, but who quite often want to be them by disassociating themselves with anything that is traditionally female. I've made so many videos on the specific things that are wrong with female characters these days, but today I want to talk about something that female characters are not doing, and why I would very much like for those things to come back. Not only were those things lovely to see, they were wildly entertaining, enriching for the characters, and allowed for thoughtful discussion about narratives that are otherwise being disregarded today. There are many things about modern female characters that lack the grace and staying power of the women of ages past, but here are just a few of those reasons. I think one of the key differences between women in Hollywood today and those women of the past is the grace and beauty that the latter seems to have in spades, and that female characters today simply lack. Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly, Marilyn Monroe, and many others had an inner and outer beauty that was subtle, but utterly captivating to watch. They dominated screens with their smiles and soft voices and beautiful clothes, drawing the eye irrevocably to them whenever they entered a room. No skin had to be shown, there were no cringe dance moves, there was no shouting. These women simply embodied a beauty that did not have to be yelled about over and over again, or demanded attention from. And yet they were the most powerful people on camera because they commanded attention with a word or an action. The way the camera revolved around them and captured their movements was a testament to the way that they were viewed. They set a beauty standard that is still being talked about today because it was timeless. There's a whole host of influencers on TikTok and Instagram who are trying to emulate the styles of the earlier decades of the 20th century, and I, for one, absolutely approve. I've seen quite enough of celebrities flashing their rear ends onto the camera and calling it modern, bold, and stunning. This is not beautiful. This is not graceful. Instead, it comes off as crass, uncouth, and downright vulgar. In an effort to liberate themselves and enforce their sexuality on a world that they find oppressive, modern celebrities and female characters simply begin to blend together into a trope that is as tired as it is repetitive. What happened to women like this, who embodied a grace and nobility that only added to their physical beauty? What happened to carrying yourself with class and decorum? I look around at celebrities and TV characters these days and see women who are so eager to prove themselves that beauty becomes a weapon, rather than an aspect of a woman that makes her unique and special. It is no longer viewed as something to admire and aspire towards. It's become a caricature, a comic strip, something to be laughed at or taken in a lighthearted way, rather than the gift that it is. Maybe the second but biggest reason that modern female characters lack femininity is because they are pretty much sexless. In this quest for women to become empowered beings, femininity has been lost almost completely. And this is seen as a totally good thing. Certain critics ranked the lack of a love interest in Captain Marvel as one of the reasons it was a better movie than Wonder Woman. Superheroes, particularly the females these days, have far less romance in their lives than in the movies of ages past. If they do, it is a footnote or else performed in a context that is harmful to others around them, in the case of WandaVision. It is not seen as a good thing, and the more romantic and asexual a female character is, the better. The idea of romance is seen almost as a character flaw, something that holds the protagonist back from being her true self, rather than as being a source of empowerment and nuance. The love story between Aragorn and Arwen in the Lord of the Rings series of movies was one of the most subtle but poignant aspects of the entire series. It was tender and profound, poignant and achingly beautiful. The romance between the pair did nothing to take away from the main storyline, and was only viewed by the audience in a few key scenes that remind us that Aragorn is more than just a warrior or a stoic man. It talks a great deal about the challenges they face as a couple as their love grows deeper, the societal expectations of her father and people, his call to fulfill his destiny, and how their romance fits into all of that, if it can. Arwen's character is profoundly feminine, not just in the way that she dresses or carries herself, but because she has a clear understanding of herself and others that she imparts to Aragorn as the series progresses. For her part, she encourages him many times not to give up hope because not all is lost. Her love for him is one of her deepest motivators, and she holds on to that hope of a better world and life so desperately that it becomes one of her subtle superpowers. Arwen's love for Aragorn does not make her weak. In fact, it is one of her greatest strengths, as the vision of her life with him and the son they have together prompts her to stay in Middle-earth. That doesn't sound like a weakness to me. And then you have characters like Galadriel, whose enduring love for her husband Celeborn was only a passing footnote in the Rings of Power series. Instead, Hollywood is viewing these women as sexless robots, driven by either revenge or an ideology that is not worth nearly so much as love is. The love between Princess Leia and Han in the original Star Wars trilogy is fun and flirtatious, full of chemistry, but at the same time heart. And yet in the end, it is her love for him that sends her into Jabba's den of debauchery to find him. The first thing that she says to him when they reunite and he asks her who she is that she is someone who loves him. Leia's love for Han doesn't make her weak. In fact, it gives her incredible strength because she is entering a very dangerous situation with very little backup. Additionally, we have Padme from the sequel trilogy, who, along with being a savvy politician and very capable fighter, exhibits a love for Anakin that is deep enough that she's excited to carry and bear his child. None would ever mistake her for being weak. Her love for him and her character was strong enough that it drove her to Mustafar to confront him for what he had done. But it didn't take away from her strength either. Once she realized that the crimes Obi-Wan had accused him of were true, she refused to follow him down the path he was heading and condemned what he had done. Despite her grief at losing him and eventually her children, she believed that there was still some good in him, even if it took a very long time to achieve that good. The love these women had for their partners did not take away from their characters. In fact, it only enhanced them. They were just as capable of becoming afraid or faltering as any other character, and yet their driving motivations only added to the depth of their personality. And yet romantic partners have been sidelined or written out of the script altogether, which leaves more time to yell and scream about how independent they are, I suppose. I heard an interesting theory the other day about how writers may avoid writing female characters with love interests because it would emotionally compromise them, preventing them from reaching an ideal independence that they believe all women strive for. It might be seen as an affront to their freedom or to their own growth, and it's rather sad that the thing that drove a lot of characters in older Hollywood, and to a much lesser extent now, is seen as a hindrance at best and a character flaw at worst. Finally, perhaps one of the biggest reasons why females aren't feminine anymore is because they are always angry. There is a tendency in them to gravitate towards constant stoicism or rage and narcissism. I miss the days when female characters were embodied by qualities like happiness, patience, or hope. An example of this is Giselle from the first Enchanted movie. She is a literal storybook character come to life, and the concept of divorce is inconceivable to her. She does not believe in not working for happiness with the one she loves, and is affronted by the very concept. She is charming and flirtatious, something modern heroines and writers lack abundantly. She encourages Morgan in her aspirations towards beauty, and is a hysterical homebody, finding joy in taking care of people and knowing them intimately. Female characters of ages past had an ability to make connections and encourage others in a way that just isn't really seen nowadays. They were lighthearted and fun, adding a breath of fresh air or a profound word to a conversation that made a person have to stop and think. And now it seems Hollywood has taken them beyond mere personality traits or having any nuance at all. They are now these women with the same body types as men, the broad shoulders and slim waist, the lack of definition between the two sexes being evident. Even the costumes and outfits that they wear are eerily similar to that of the men, skin-tight suits that show off muscle mass, and little else. I find it so interesting that modern female characters put great emphasis on sexuality, but at the same time don't want to be objectified or viewed in any sexual way at all. It's terribly confusing because beauty standards have been utterly rejected in favor of a carbon copy of action and aggression, and women like Wonder Woman, who, in addition to being an incredibly accomplished character, still held on to her sense of compassion and beauty, even though she was fighting in a war, and she's now the exception. And the rule has become aggressive women who don't have any measurable sense of beauty standards, who lack personality and are constantly angry, often using fists instead of words to get through a problem. And this is really quite sad, because not only does it reduce the ability of writers to tell a good story, but it really degrades women, making them less than who they are, limiting them in personality, and generally acknowledging that such traits as encouragement, hope, compassion, and grace don't really have much place in the world anymore. And what we have to look forward to are just an endless assembly line of hollow, shallow women whose only purpose is to yell and scream and throw their fists. In doing so, writers have reduced the duality and nuance of women to a series of extremely degrading and base instincts and calling them modern. Well, if this is modern, then I want no part of it. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. Be sure to subscribe for more like it, and let me know down in the comments what aspects of pop culture that you would like me to talk about, and let's have a conversation about it. And I'll see you next time.